Thank you, Mayor Velasco, council members. Appreciate the opportunity to come and do our annual report. I would be remiss if I didn't mention that we have some members of my very supportive board in the audience. We have our chair, Greg Edgar. We have our treasurer, Jay Baxa. We have our secretary and resident tourism expert, Jane Howard. Mayor Velasco, of course, is here. We're very happy to have the mayor on our board. Glenn Pace, Rob Anetto, and Dan Harney. So very pleased. Thank you for being here to support. Okay, I was asked to come and do an update and give you a quick review of our master plan. So today we're going to go through our 2018 results. Very quick history of the 19 years. I can't believe that I'm saying 19 years. Some fun facts so that you have some things to tell the public when they ask. A review of the master plan and our goals for 19, and a sneak preview of our 20th birthday party, because 2020 will be our 20th year. So 2018 was the best year ever. If you had watched the marketing campaigns, you would see that we advertised bigger slides for bigger kids. As you can see from that picture, the slides are now big enough for mom and dad to go down. That was our Water Oasis 2 capital investment. It's about $4.5 million investment, 100% funded from existing cash flow. We had a 50,000 bump or additional attendance because of that particular installation. So attendance reached 457,000 from a low in the worst years of about 329. Membership sales, which are season passes, rose to 66,000 versus about 41 the prior year. And that represents a very healthy and sustaining 12.42% net profit margin. We've only gotten above 10% 3 times. For the record, those were the times there was water product added to the park. So 19 years, this is my favorite slide. Thank you to Articulate Solutions and Jason Raby for doing this for me. I think it makes it easy to show you what's happened in the past 19 years. This represents 17. I don't have data from the first 2 years the park was open. The blue bars are attendance. So you can see that goes up 5 years, down 5 years, up, which is sort of an industry trend, that rolling. The green line is the net profit margin. So you can see that in the last 5 years, we've had a nice sustaining net profit margin that is, in fact, for the best year ever, growing. So I'll just draw your attention to the last 5 years. 14 and 15 was Water Oasis. And I don't think, Water Oasis are these 2 years with that increase. And then Illumination, which was the year that we did the Chinese Lantern Festival. The attendance, in fact, was the highest it had ever been. Slightly less in net profit because, of course, we had to pay the Chinese $1.2 million to bring that and do that experiment. The next year dropped off because we were waiting and saving to put in Water Oasis 2. We put Water Oasis 2 in and got up to our highest net profit. So pretty excited about that. Here's another or a different way to look at that history. It's the dollars put back into the asset or to the city. The green section in there that is the largest, $7.6 million, that's the capital improvements that have been put back into the product, mainly the 2 water areas, with some money also going to infrastructure for the Gardens at Night program. The next largest is the deferred maintenance, which is $3.7 million or almost 3.8. That's sort of like fixing your roads and sidewalks and streets and putting things back into the asset. And then the lease payment comes to about 1.2 for a total of $12.5 million. Community fun facts. So if people ask, these are some of the things that I like to tell people about the property. Average of 500 jobs for youth per year. By 2020, that will represent 10,000 seasonal jobs. At 450,000 in attendance per year, by 2020, that will represent 7.5 million in visitation to the gardens. Currently, we have 66,000 members. Only 4,400 of those are Gilroyan. So only 6.75 of our attendance comes from Gilroy, so that represents a 93% visitation that comes from outside Gilroy and is truly tourism-based. Jane loves that figure. Some more community fun facts. Gilroy Appreciation Days, those are our free day that we do at the beginning of the year, 65,000 visits since 2010. Gilroy reads, some people don't realize that if you visit the library 5 times, a child can earn a free ticket. There's no reason for any child not to be able to go to the gardens. We've seen 4,700 visits on that program since 2013. Grew tremendously last year at 1,700, so someone has found that. 22,000 grade 2 and grade 4 Gilroy students have come from natural science days since 2005, and our Gilroy Unified School District community service hours are sitting at about 1,400. We intend to increase that tremendously in an endeavor with the Chamber and Gilroy Unified School District to partner on a community service orientation day on June 13th that all the grade 8s will be invited to. We'd like to make that an annual event to teach our youth about the volunteering opportunities that there are within the city. So getting on to the actual master planning, for those of you who haven't heard this, I will just go through the goals very quickly. Please feel free, those of you that are new to this, to give me a call or an email after the fact if you want to have more information than we have time for today. The goals were to grow the annual attendance to 500,000 by 2020. We're at 457, with a goal of 800,000 once the full master plan is implemented. So that's out 5-10 years. Gradually increase the upper age of child users to 12 years old. I will tell you the new water area will hold a 10, 11, or 12-year-old, but it needs more for that age range. Add guest experiences outside the traditional children's theme park. The idea being, much like Lumination, we need to try and do things at night and more things that use the park not just for the kiddie ride. So it's not about bulgy tubs of fun, but it's about coming to the gardens for other purposes. Maintain our mission, our learning mission, and define the compatible land use. So many of you have seen this slide. I think it was in the EPS place-based report as well, the economic study. This shows the property divided into sort of 3 areas. The top, this mint green, is the hillside above the park. This bottom area, the purple, is visitor serving commercial, which is closest to 101, and this is the park proper. So the first master plan focused on the park proper mainly. Lots of different colors about different places we could add things. Just want to draw your attention to 2 of those, the blue area right here and the green area beside it. That's the area of expansion that is within the footprint of the park that is the easiest to grow attractions. This light blue here is Water Oasis 2 that went in last year. Here's just an image of what a water park, that blue area, could look like. Family-oriented, lazy rivers, tucked into the hillside. Here's some ideas about what the adventure area that was green could look like, focused on health, wellness, and those sorts of things. So that was our first master plan, was doing that. Then we want to bring your attention to the size of that hillside. That's the 350 acres that sits above the gardens. And we did a tremendous bit of work on what we could do with that. You have often heard me say what we'd like to do is open that up for public access. So some information about that. Here that is on an actual Google map, where if you could open that up for public access with trails, you can see how it would connect to Mount Madonna and the trail section there. If we pull back even further from that, you see the Mount Madonna, you can see Coyote, you can see the Bear Park, Coyote Bear Park, and that star there is Gilroy Gardens, so that's where we would fit on that trail, and then pulling it back to the full Bay Area Ridge Trail. All of those red lines are trail that exists, and the dotted lines are trails that are intended to go in, and down at the bottom is our location right below Mount Madonna, where Gilroy Gardens is, and where those trails would line up. So we then looked at what sorts of things would you be doing if you could gain public access to those hills. Obviously, hiking. We would love to see mountain biking. That shows an actual lift that would get you up to the top if we were to put in, be able to get mountain bike trails in there. This shows zip lines. If you get all the way up, you could also come down with zip lines. This is not new for many of you. I've been talking about this in our master plan for a couple of years, the opportunities that there are on that hillside. Obviously, if we were up at the top, we would want to have some sort of family-friendly things once you got up there. And there's opportunities for a cafe, farm-to-table type cafe overlooking that beautiful ridgeline. So those are the visuals of what we're looking at. So where are we with the master plan? If that is the master plan, where are we? 2016, we did the first one, the overall master plan that showed you the three areas, the hillside, the park proper, and the visitor-serving commercial. Visitor-serving commercial, you've heard other terms lately. You've heard base village, mixed-use base village, which came from the EPS impact study, the economic impact study. Same thing, or you've heard city walk. If you went to Universal, the area outside of the theme park was called City Walk. That's what that means. All of that is about when the master plan grows, that area becomes even more valuable because you've got more tourism being driven. In February 2017, we actually did a conceptual design of that water area. I showed you a picture of what it might look like. When we put in Water Oasis 2, the company that did that did a conceptual design of a full 10-acre water park. In February of 2018, we did a conceptual design of the recreation expansion into the hillside with public access. So there's a plan for hiking, mountain biking, outdoor recreation focused on health and wellness. And March of this year, 2019, the board approved and commissioned an economic impact study so that I could bring back to the council information from that saying exactly what the park as it currently is, what that drives through the city from a tourism perspective. We've also asked them to include, on top of that, what would that bring if the entire master plan came to fruition and we could implement it. And I'd really love an opportunity to come back and to explain that or to do a presentation on that when I have that information. We commissioned the same person who presented at the general plan, Councilman Tucker, for the EPS, who did the economic impact study. And the concept there for the board was that we try to connect all those specialists that are doing those things together so that those public-private partnerships, should they ever come to fruition, all have the same vision and they're not saying all sorts of different things. So the board, thank you, has commissioned that economic impact study. We should probably have that in 60 to 90 days, I would hope. And then I will get with Gabe and see if I can come back and explain that. Okay, what are we doing immediately? That was the master plan. What happens for 2019 and our 20th birthday? Nothing is new for 2019. We're going to maintain the attendance gain from Water Oasis 2. Water product usually gives you a 2-year hit in order to have attendance bump, and we'll continue the Gardens at Night, Halloween, and Holiday. But the main reason for that is we need to be saving money to prep for the 20th birthday party. That launch will happen with our membership drive in August of 2019. We'll start talking about our birthday. Don't miss the party. It'll be from opening day to Labor Day 2020. What we'd like to do is a full park color palette refresher. Signage, buildings, flowers, which means there will be dollars put into the infrastructure of the park in year 20 to bring it back up to a different level as we go on into the next 10 years of its existence. Obviously, 20 years of memories, giant birthday cards, giant birthday cakes, stilt walkers, jugglers are the sorts of things we're talking about. A great big huge birthday party, everything a child would expect at your birthday party when you come to Gilroy Gardens in 2020. And then the next exciting thing will be Gardens at Night 2020. So after Labor Day, we will move into our evening product. We've been working on this since Lumination to try and come up with a product that will give us the same excitement in the community as Lumination, but we own it and it's ours. This is a depiction of Descanso Gardens just outside of LA. The upper pictures are the gardens during the daytime. The lower pictures are the gardens at night with the natural areas being lit. So the concept is to be able to do a light and sound show extravaganza in the park at night. That would be a walkthrough for guests, a second ticket. I then went to Scotland to see something called the Enchanted Forest. We won't call it the Enchanted Forest. To a little place called Pitlochry. The best way I could describe it would be it's kind of Monterey Bay in Scotland. It is a tourist place. And this is one of the things that put them on the map. So I went to see it because it sounded like it was something that we could do. I just want to play you this little video, and then you can ask questions about any of that. So that's just a little snippet of what they did. This was a public park like Henry Coe or Harvey Bear. Ours, of course, would be a little different, but the way they lit their property was beautiful, and people bussed in just to see the product. So that's the sort of thing that we're working on for 2020 for in the fall. And that's it.
Thank you, Barb. Council, queue up if you have any questions. Any questions from the council? Cool. Councilmember Tovar.
Sorry, Marie. Barb, first of all, thank you for that. As you know, I'm a big supporter, and I'm excited to see many of the visions that you and the board have, and I look forward to that. So, question for you. Earlier you mentioned, and I don't know if this is typical, but the number of Gilroyans that visit Gilroy Gardens is, what's that percentage again?
6.75.
Given our population here, is that a low percentage?
No, that's a very, very high penetration.
Okay, just wanted to make sure.
From a community perspective, that's a very high penetration.
Right.
You've only got 55,000 residents,
Right.
and we have a attendance of 450,000.
Right.
So from a penetration perspective, obviously, we have the most penetration of the South of Bay in a community. It just shows you, because of the size of Gilroy, how many people need to come from out of the area and what the property is driving, whether that's a day visit from Morgan Hill or Watsonville, or whether that's further away.
Yeah. And then the other wonderful program you have, you mentioned the 5 visits to the library. We get you a free ticket, correct?
Yes.
Is that for just Gilroy residents, or is that anybody that goes to our library 5 times?
It's anyone that has a library card.
Okay.
What Lonnie?
Yeah.
What she's doing is she's trying to use it for people and families, specifically families, to get a card and to use the library. So it doesn't have to be children. It's the entire family. They just need to go 5 times, so 5 different dates, and bring us a chit that says they took something out of the library, anyone in the family, and that equals a free ticket.
Great. All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Blankley.
Thanks for the presentation, Barb. I love seeing the big ideas. It's beautiful. I got to say, though, when you first started, I thought I was at a Jason Bourne episode with the asset. Everything's going back into the asset, you were saying. So I want the viewing public to understand that the 100% funded by existing cash flow, is because the city took, the city owns the park, and we don't take money from the park, or very little, so that the park can have money to sustain itself. And that's kind of where we are. So those are the existing funds. And
that's an amazing way to explain it, Marie. That's exactly the choice that is appreciated tremendously. You have described it perfectly.
Right. So that's where we are. The ideas are beautiful, but nowhere in there was an anticipated increased money to the city, right? We're still just, the park is trying to sustain itself. I know. I
think the economic impact report that the board has commissioned will help us explain that better, in that what does 450,000 in visitation with 93% outside of Gilroy, what does that drive? And then that will give this council an understanding of what the economic impact of tourism is, and whatever you're expecting to drive tourism with, and what you want to do in the future in that area versus other of your endeavors for economic development.
Right. Was it a board decision to have the visits at the library equate to a ticket?
No, actually, that was I was approached by the library and said, I think it's a wonderful idea. I think when the new library went in, they were looking for ways to introduce to the community the library, and to make sure that it was being appropriately utilized.
Right.
I think there was also a program called Gilroy Reads, which was being developed, and they were reaching out to those people that could assist with advertising that program, and they just called me, and I said that was a great idea.
Thank you.
Anybody else? So, Barb, kind of segueing on Councilmember Tovar and Councilmember Blankley's question, we have about 6 or 7% penetration, Gilroy folks. The rest is outside the area. And Councilmember Blankley brought up the revenue side, which the city's always looking at. other than dollars, when someone comes to me and says, hey, I want to talk to you about the gardens, what value can I say the gardens provides?
And I think that's the struggle with tourism that we all have, and I am so appreciative that Jane is on our board because she's very good at explaining that. Is there a formula by which you can say for every visitor that comes into Gilroy, what does that give back to the city from an economic impact perspective? We need to develop a formula, truthfully, so that we can say that.
You're talking about dollars. I'm talking about other. I mean, you could define value as dollars, right? But what other value is there?
Well, from a community perspective, I would say that there are very few communities of this size that have something like this in their backyard, not just to enjoy as a child, but I would say that one of the things I enjoy the most are the 500 jobs. The kids that come out of this community are exceptional. We can handle from age 15 to all the way through university, virtually anyone who wants a job. And I don't think that exists anywhere else. And the training that you get when you get to do something that with your summer job, or all through the season, because we're open virtually weekends except for January and February.
Yeah, that's actually my first lead talking point is, where the Gardens is the #1 employer of our youth.
Exactly. We're actually doing this. Okay, this is a really early to tell you about this. We're doing an experiment with our supervisory training because we are pretty excited about the level of training the supervisors get by being at the park. So the board allowed me to hire someone to come and do a specialty training session with our 60 seasonal supervisors, and we're going to put together an online web course that is leadership and hospitality that will define what we do that our supervisors can take, and we can use them as sort of a guinea pig for that program. My goal would be then to speak with Gavilan, see if we can get it certified. We have talked to Councilman Tovar a little bit about it because he's obviously a supporter of that. But those are the sorts of things that I think are tremendously unique. The size of the property is perfect for those young adults to learn so much more than they can in any other summer job. By 17, you can virtually run a restaurant in a very safe environment and learn those skills. So I think that's probably pretty special.
Yeah, and again, so there's the dollar value of the park, both direct and indirect, and then of course the other harder to define value of the benefit to the community.
Well, I also think that from a quality of life perspective, it would be good to be able to figure out as our population grows, some of the reasons why people want to bring their families here, what the quality of life is in Gilroy. And I think the more we can see our master plan grow, the more we can add to the property, and especially in areas like the hillside, so that there's health and wellness involved, there's environment, it's a very special place. And there are state parks and there are city parks, but to be able to have something where you could have access to that for our youth, for families, I think it would make a tremendous difference in the way the community is viewed. And I realize that's, as Marie says, it's a great vision. Yeah. But I think it would, the opportunity is there.
So let me transition. You recently had the Gilroy Appreciation Day this year. Mm-hmm. How was that?
6,300. We've gone as high as 10,000 in the past. I think it's a pretty exciting day. Our residents, not only do we able to say thank you to our residents and able to let them enjoy the park, it's a wonderful training tool for those young adults. Mm-hmm. There are an awful lot of parents whose kids are working for the first time. Now you can be 15. And we'll let you start. So they get a great kick out of coming and watching their kids on their very first day. I will tell you it's pretty scary for the 15-year-olds when there's 6 or 7,000, because a good day at the park is normally about 3,000. 3,000 is the sweet spot where you're making the right amount of money. So 6 is high and can be a little scary for that first day, but it's great fun.
And then lastly, and then we have Councilmember Tucker. Regarding the sustainability, excuse me, I have a tickle in my throat. Regarding the sustainability of the park, how do you see the park over the next few years?
Well, I'm very glad you asked me that. When minimum wage, the whole minimum wage issue started, with it going up, $1 a year every year, and in 5 years it was going to go up $5. I would say that most of the hospitality and tourism industry panicked a little because they're seasonal workers, and it's a tremendous hit to your bottom line to do that. I would say we've all gotten over the reality of the fact. We have gone up, since I talked to this board about that, $2 per person. That's $1 million in expenses, and we had the best year ever. So you deal with what you have, and I would say the sustainability of the park at about 7% net profit margin, it is incredibly sustainable. I was doing some research the other day on a profit margin and what should it be in a company of different sizes. The theme park industry sits at about 23%. Cedar Fair would have their large parks like Great America sit between 23 and 25% net profit margin. Smaller parks sit well under 10. Most sit under 5. Small businesses, I think, feel really good if they're between that 5 and 10% area. So the more I look at that, the more I say, if we stay between 7 and 12%, then the sustainability is excellent. When I first came to the property, Roland, I was used to big theme parks. I didn't know anything about running a nonprofit. I didn't know anything about running a smaller entity. So I was looking for that 20% margin in order for the park to be there. I didn't look at it as an ROI being jobs and tourism. I looked at it as being cash, and you see how quickly I always go to the cash as opposed to those other things. I looked at the pro forma. The board does, yes, they do. I looked at the pro forma, and I went to my boss and said, when can I leave? Because this place is dead in 2 years. Because in my world, as a theme park, a large theme park, it was going to struggle. It took the board 10 years to get that stabilized and to figure out where we needed to be sustainable. And that's Jay's favorite word, is sustainability of the property. So once we got through those 10 years, and there was a recession in the middle of that, but once we got through those 10 years, and as you can see that the net profit is sustaining, we're at 20 years next year. So if a small business gets safe at 10, we're at 20. So I would say there will be ups and downs, but there's no reason to believe that this property isn't sustaining.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. Councilmember Tucker.
Hi. Thank you so much for your report. And I was going to jump in and say before he already answered his own question, one of the best features besides the tourism aspect is the jobs for the teens and all the things that you just already said. So I was going to bring up that from my perspective, I think an advocate for youth jobs, it's definitely a great place and an asset to the community. However, the things that I was really glad to hear you say that you commissioned an economic study, because right now you have really the use, there's a lot of land that you're not using. And as we, the council, are looking for economic development, we're looking at some of that land since that land is owned by the city. And I remember when we bought the land or from Mr. Bonfante, it was originally to have it for future parks and future parks available to the community. And so it's kind of morphed. I remember it's kind of morphed. So things have changed, but I'm still looking for, you only really use 70 acres. So if you can still be sustainable on your 70 acres, I'm still looking for what can we do on the others. And all the ideas you have are wonderful ideas, and I'm supportive of those trails. I'm supportive of all those things. But it seems because you are a nonprofit, you can't just push in a ton of money in 1 year, right? You have to do, isn't that correct? You have to save up and do it over 3 to 5 years or something. It took you a while to get the water slides, and they're wonderful. I was there last year at the opening. It was great, and I know a lot of families love it. So that's kind of where I'm coming from. So I'm looking forward to your study from the people, the economic, to show us the value. I know what tourism does.
Tourism is
but
a long game. Tourism
know.
is not a short game. Tourism is a long game. I think one of the interesting things with the property is I agree with you about the public park. I think Jay is very happy to hear you say that because I know that was one of the original
ideas,
the original reasons for the purchase. That hillside is not developable per se for other things. So public access to that hillside can almost do both. It can be a bigger tourist attraction if you chose to be as bold as to have a mountain bike park and zip lines and weave that in. I know Connie had brought me at one point something from out east that she really wanted, which is very similar. So that would be bold, but it also gives you public access. And that would need to be a partnership with people that would need to go find the money to put that in.
Right.
But once that sort of thing happens, once those sorts of tourism, that growth in tourism happens, that piece of land at the bottom close to 152, which is the visitor serving commercial, mixed village, base village, city walk, whatever, that grows in value and how you choose to use it with every single 100,000 tourism growth that the property provides, if it is part of a tourism vision. So the more attraction you get in, the more tourism you drive to that location, the more value from a development perspective that piece of land is.
Right, right.
And you are correct, that does not need to be park. It doesn't need to be theme park, that the visitor serving commercial. Obviously, at some point, depending on at what point you're driving tourism, at some point it has to have a hotel. God, it has to.
Yeah.
As soon as you get to the point where you're driving overnight visits with the attractions that when they've grown to that level, then anything you put in there, as with any mixed use, as with any city walk, has hotel parts to that. It may not be ready yet, but it will be. I don't think we're that far from it, truthfully. Right now, I understand there are probably better locations in the city to put in a hotel. But eventually, from a tourism perspective, that you're going to want one there, eventually.
Okay, thank you.
I think that's it, Barb. Thank you so much for the presentation. It was a really good presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Appreciate the opportunity.
Okay,